Hello, everyone. My name is Tarek. I'm partner at Shorooq Partners. We're a Middle Eastern-based investment firm with about $500 million of assets under management. We've done more than 180 investments in 68 companies across the region. Turkey happens to be a very, very important market for us, especially on the gaming side, and I lead the gaming division under Shorooq Partners. In our short time span, we've incubated more than 270 companies in the gaming space. Some of them come from Turkey, some obviously globally. And we're quite humble because this is how we've learned how the gaming space is quite difficult. This is how we've learned the gaming space is a space that does require in-depth knowledge, and you can't necessarily come from investing in fintech, health tech, and whatnot, and be able to DD or due diligence a gaming company. And it is for the founders and the trust our LPs who have become 9 sovereign wealth funds across the region are some of our investors. Some probably names you would know, PIF, Jada Fund of Funds, and SVC, all big names in Saudi, and UAE and the likes have our partners and our investors in our firm. Are quite happy to be a local partner or a regional partner for gaming companies globally that would like to tap into the Middle East. What I aim to do in this conversation and discussion is to quickly, I would say, recap what is happening globally, and then dive into some insights or observations from the Middle East. Some of these would be new to you. Some of them would be, yeah, we know that already. And we aim to create an open conversation. So feel free to reach out right after this to get in touch, whether you're an investor and would like to co-invest with us, or you're a founder and you're raising funds. We're always excited to hear from amazing founders like yourself. So a quick snapshot. Nothing globally there that is new to you. It is a $200+ billion market with $600 million just in gaming VC spent or investments just in the past quarter. Yeah, these are massive numbers, and we're quite excited to play a critical role into the VC investment landscape today. And one of the major trends that we're seeing, not only from a development perspective, but also consumer perspective, is that more and more games are becoming cross-platform from day one. Founders are knocking doors at our investment firm saying, we are building cross-platform games. It's no longer just mobile, no longer just PC, no longer just console. It's cross-platform right from day one. Not only that, but it's also a transmedia play. There is far more importance being put on IP today over building a successful game. And there's a huge difference. IP means game, merchandise, TV, series, music, you name it. It transcends to become far more of a love mark and a brand beyond just the game. But being a MENAP-based investment firm, we're in the middle of what is being labeled as the fastest growing market in gaming, and one that is now actively investing in the gaming scene. And it's exciting to see what's happening in the MENAP region and how Turkey can play a role into building on top of what's happening here, and how we could build a role in building Turkey up as well. So $3 billion today is the size of the MENAP market, and it's growing at 13% CAGR every year. That's huge. But we're seeing some of these gaming companies that are early stages. By the way, no comparison to the quality of gaming companies that are coming from Turkey, right? But these are extremely early idea, pre-seed stage companies that have raised so far, just in the past quarter, $50 million. For us, investors, that number have actually surprised us because we wouldn't even put a dime. And for that to happen, it just means there is a lot of excitement and there is potential. And people are investing more in the potential today than it is on the quality. But people like us are actually investing abroad. Hence why we're in Turkey. Because for us, deals and importance of quality is far more important today than just supporting the potential. For potential, we've created an incubator that could support learning and getting them the insights and getting them the experience that they would need to build successful gaming companies. But it's exciting, very, very exciting. And if you don't necessarily have today a MENAP angle to your publishing arm, if you don't have a MENAP angle to your fundraising, you're missing on hell of a lot. So a quick glance. Today, globally, some of the insights that we're seeing is that 8 out of 10 gamers are actually a tri-platform player. They own a mobile, they play a game on PC, and they have a console at home. It's the new consumer. The new consumer is expected to start a game on mobile, move into console, finish whatever they started there on mobile, and then go ahead and play with friends on PC. And we believe that there will be companies that will leverage this consumer behavior to create a seamless omni-experience across all platforms. Who are they? We'll still figure out. But cloud gaming and cloud computing will play a critical role into enabling all of this. Consumer brands are, and we're always, especially music brands, we're always skeptical of the gaming scene. But that's no longer the case. Consumer brands understood that they're missing out on an entire generation that spends most of their time on games. And we're not talking about the younger ones. We're talking about players who have purchasing power. They're the ones calling the shots. And this is the average age today. It's almost 35 years of age that actually spends most of the time playing games. And today we don't only see consumer brands trying to tie in e-sport competitions and whatnot, but they're more and more trying to tap into native advertising inside the game. And we see Nike, Adidas, and many others tapping into creating their own Roblox and their own Minecraft games to engage with the consumer a whole lot more. We see music brands creating music concerts today on Fortnite. Who remembers back in the Corona days, there was Marshmello went out for the first time ever with a concert on Fortnite, right? Who attended that one? And we all, jumped and acted crazy, and it looked dumb back then, but music industry spotted it right away. They immediately saw that this is a place for us to publish music and find new people to let them know about the music industry and the new songs that are coming out. And all indie artists, including the big ones today, have some sort of, in the back of their head, at least for now, that games are going to be the next platform for publishing music. So whoever is publishing and building games today, you're in the right market. We're just at the tip of the iceberg there. Tip of the iceberg. Last two things is everybody at the beginning of the year said, crypto is dead. And to a degree, crypto did suffer a winter or spring, or call it whatever it is. But we believe crypto and NFT, blockchain in general, is there to stay. And it is going to enable the next UGC platforms. It will enable the next generation of games. And we see it in the data. Crypto games and Web3 games have actually stayed. They showed resilience in terms of DAOs, and the numbers just show the importance of that sector. Now, they might not necessarily be invested in a lot of VCs today, but we will see that shifting very, very soon. And I can tell you that the Middle East is by far the most progressive regulator in the Web3 space today. Hence why we see a lot of Web3 companies flocking into Abu Dhabi markets, Dubai market, and closer markets to actually start shop because of how much the regulator is actually pushing for it. And Saudi is going to follow. Last point is kind of general observation. Today, all the public gaming companies that we know of are sitting on a pile of cash. Pile of cash. And though we knew that M&A activities are the heaviest in, it's the typical exit for any gaming company, we only see that going more and more and happening more and more over the next few years. We will see far more M&A activities over the next few years because that cash will have to go somewhere, and it will certainly go into acquisitions. So let's go through quickly just snapshots. 44% of game development today is cross-platform. And that is going to bring up a rise for new games and new developers to make sure that their games right from the beginning is a multi-platform play. But that hasn't happened, it didn't happen out of no reason. It's actually backed by the consumer behavior. Simply, game development has doubled because the average number of players has increased. Today, we see 100 million players in 2023 versus the last year. We also see that this has been enabled because of cloud computing. So cloud games are playing a critical role into enabling all of this. And we see that's the reason why 81% of players spend north 12 hours of play, active play, over the entire number of the conglomerate three platforms. But it's still skewed towards male, but not too much. It's still 60% male. Mobile gaming, again, a snapshot there. Mobile gaming is still quite heavy, but it's going to force mobile developers to actually innovate into monetization. I think in the previous panel, we talked about high IFDAs, making it harder to build retention tools and look at ways to kind of increase LTV and whatnot. But I don't think, and at least we don't think, mobile is over. If anything, mobile will adapt. How will it adapt is a key metric. And we believe that this is going to drive gaming studios to innovate. One of the innovations that we're seeing today is that a lot of mobile game developers are going into subscriptions, layering a subscription model on top of their in-app purchases. Not only they're unlocking more details and a higher LTV, but they're enabling far more superior performance or ARPU per player than before. So who is going to innovate that space? Who's going to come around it? I think is a question mark that we're totally excited to see. We talked about consumer brands and advertising, and gaming by far is taking the major share of spend today. Now, one of the trends that we're seeing is that more and more startups are actually going into native ads, enabling consumer brands to put their advertisements inside the game in a non-invasive manner. No more ads in the middle, no more 3-second ads. All of that is slowly fading into non-invasive ads. The difficult part is it's quite difficult to understand the performance of that, right? And whether or not people saw the ad or not. But a lot of companies, and you'll see later, like Ansu, are trying to answer that question. They haven't figured it out yet, but they're getting there. And we'll see that space far more going into towards mobile, not only PC and console. We talked about Web3, and we believe that that evolution is still happening. More and more companies are being resilient, and as investors, we're absolutely excited about the Web3 game version. Now, we don't believe every single game company has to have a Web3 angle to it, and we don't believe we need to force users into Web3 either. But there will be a component, a new component in our P&L that will be blockchain sales. Whether these are NFTs, whether these are transaction costs, you name it, it will happen and will happen soon. And here are probably some of the games that you guys have played. A show of hands if you've played any of these. Have you played any of the games that you see here? Yeah? Okay, well great. At least a good number out of the audience. I would say around 7 or 8 of you have played some form of a game here. So Unchained, obviously Gods Unchained launched on Epic back in June 2022. We saw Ubisoft for the first time ever tapping into Web3 element with the Champions Tactics. And it's so funny to see all the big brands coming into Web3. And I'll tell you why it's funny. The past year, whenever we met with big publishers and developers, Web3 was not on the table. In fact, every single time we brought Web3 into the conversation, it was like, we don't believe in this. It's game design, Web 2, this is how it works, boom, boom, boom. And then fast forward 6 months later, literally every single big game developer or publisher did some sort of a partnership with a chain. And what we believe we see today is all the big brands are trying to soften up towards what does it mean, and to test it, and to learn it, and to invest in it. So we saw some of the large corporates actually investing in some of these Web3 gaming companies. So what's going to come ahead is just good for everybody that is building on a Web3 element. But are they building on-chain, multi-chain, or off-chain is still something that we believe is going to be more on-chain assets, not fully chain. We believe on-chain assets will rule over the next few years. Until it becomes faster to actually accommodate dynamic games that do require faster frame rates and faster speed to be on full chain. So full chain is possible for certain genres today, but certainly not for shooter games. But on-chain assets is where majority of the investments are going to today, because everybody's still skeptical regardless if you can or not, still everyone is skeptical. So globally, the investment landscape has dramatically saw that shift. We see a lot of the investments that have happened this half year is been put into blockchain and Web3 games. And that comes in a space where everybody was actually skeptical. So it seems like the more people are skeptical, the more they invest in it. So if we want to create a movement, let's get people be skeptical about something and get their monies in. But it's funny to see everybody was skeptical, yet everybody invested in blockchain somehow or another. Obviously, hardware continues because we do not necessarily gonna see changes, dramatic changes in the gaming scene without advancements in chip manufacturing, without advancements in console. Today we see, this year alone, Sony has signed or kind of closed their patent on blockchain, enabling their blockchain into their console, right? I don't know how many of you have saw the news, but Sony today, or as a console, the next generations of PlayStation will enable Web3 games. We also saw that movement through the app stores on mobile and whatnot. There's new companies like Zile actually tapping into Web3 consoles and creating consoles for Web3 games. So there is good investments into hardware. And then finally, we still see very little investments in XR games or immersive games for that sake. And we believe that there come a time where they will be dominating the next wave of games. Is it today? Not necessarily. There must be a change in cloud gaming, in enabling the high fidelity graphics to actually be felt and played with, but without major headsets on your face. And our bet, Sony will probably be the first ones to tap into this with their contact lenses. So Sony a few years ago filed a patent that enables users to put on a contact lens that works and gets power by flickering your eyes, your eyelids. And that enables an entire AR world on top of your retina without putting any electric wires, no batteries, no nothing. It's impressive where we're heading with technology, but is that going to fuel the next XR games? Maybe. So these are some kind of globally active M&As that have happened. Probably the Embracer Group and Savvy Games Group fell out. So that is news hot off the press. But they obviously have acquired many other deals. We saw, to a degree, everybody saw the Activision Microsoft deal going back and forth and what that entirely meant. But we see deals across the entire chain. And as you can see, all these are big companies sitting on pile of cash, $45 billion in reserves. That's just cash that needs to go into the best studios that are out there and best technologies that are out there. And that's going to just continue. So how does it look like in the MENAP region? Well, quick snapshot. Saudi Arabia is increasingly being a core player in the market. Heavy on mobile to a degree, although they have all the purchasing power as consumers to get into PC and console. But mobile still is dominant to a big degree in the Middle East. Not necessarily just Saudi Arabia, but Middle East overall. UAE gamers are the highest in terms of ARPU, $144 of annual revenue per user, and it's the highest across the entire region. It seems that cloud gaming is something that came natural to the Middle East, so we see tons of cloud data centers opening left, right, and center, enabling more of this consumer behavior of people moving from one platform to another. But the consumer in the Middle East are ones that choose to keep their data private. And probably that's coming predominantly from a cultural standpoint. I think that's more maybe skewed with Egypt numbers and Saudi numbers. So it's harder for marketers to actually reach to the direct consumer, regardless if there was IFDA or not. So numbers, cost per install, CPI numbers are quite high, and it's very, very expensive to acquire users today in the Middle East. Now, depending on the genre, of course. So what is happening is that when you take a look at different markets, and we would say 3 markets that are a must in the Middle East. It's Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and UAE. Together, they make around 500 million people. And the problem is that they don't necessarily speak the same dialect. They don't share the same laws. And the consumer behaviors are quite different. But the good thing is that if, as a company, you were able to tap into those three markets and take good market share in them, by default, you are an acquisition play. Because nobody sane enough would come from outside and say, let's start from scratch. It is way easier to get somebody who did it on the ground, figured out the legal issues, the regulatory issues, the payment issues. Oh, don't let me speak about payments. Payments are even worse. Around 70% of players in the Middle East still use some sort of offline payments. These are your direct billing. These are your prepaid cards that you get in all these shops. And if you enable the way for players and publishers to tap into that 70% market gap, you're winning right from the bat. And if you're just considering payments online, you're leaving a lot of money on the table. So finding a way that you could scale this and finding a way to tap into this is a game changer for game publishers. The only company that we see, or two companies that we see playing strongly in the Middle East on the fintech side, are Razor Gold and Tomatem, a regional player that is publisher and a fintech arm with Tomatem Plus. Those are the only two trying to sort that out. But anybody here that is trying to figure that out and solve for that issue, you're on a gold mine. We talked about ARPU. So ARPU at Saudi Arabia today is around $100. It's still quite heavy on mobile games, but PC and console are actually catching up. Especially that when the COVID years have come and PlayStation launched into the market, the consoles were not necessarily there. Middle East were actually one of the regions that were not necessarily quite affected with that. Console sales actually happened in the Middle East, especially Saudi. So we see a higher penetration of PlayStation 5 today, and it's just increasing. And mobile still dominating, but that gap is closing up faster than we think. UAE is almost the same, but you can see it's a bit more balanced in the UAE. So mobile gamers, PC, are kind of the highest in terms of player behaviors or platforms that they prefer to play in. But are we good for time? Yeah, excellent. But then, majority of the genres they like to play is strategy games. Kind of different from where Saudis like to play, where they spend more of their time into hybrid casual and shooting games. Quick snapshot on the Middle Eastern investment. I think the investment landscape today in the Middle East is quite young and nascent. We only saw around $50 million being invested in companies that are based in the Middle East. It's a tiny, tiny fraction of investments globally, but it's a momentum that we see, right? And companies like ourselves are tapping into global companies and trying to build that bridge with companies that are here and sovereign wealth funds that make up our fund, and enable a movement and acquisition of not only players, but acquisition of the companies to set up shop. So that's extremely our value add as investors, not only the depth understanding of the gaming scene, but also the close proximity to where the capital markets are. So to summarize, quick snapshots, cross-platform, cloud computing. In fact, I would even go down the line of quantum computers will change how games are going to be designed. In fact, developing games and coding games are going to be extremely different down the line. Players that do only one platform probably would die out, and more, not only just global, but cross-platform play will be extremely important. Number two, there is a consumer behavior that we see. Majority of consumers today spend their time on games. Brands understand that, but who's there to enable brands to engage with players in a native and non-invasive way? That's something that we want to see, and probably will see more and more people playing in. Fintech is still a problem. Payments, you think payments are solved for, but guess what? We're still far from solving for payments. Payments are a major problem, even more problem in emerging markets. So who's out there kind of trying to close that gap will actually win a lot of publishers. And finally, Web3 is here to stay. The blockchain games and what that means for user-generated content is going to come and stay. And that does not take the light away from the entire AI dimension that we're tapping into, whether adaptive music and whether graphics that are done faster and cheaper, or AAA companies and gaming franchises that are done in a fraction of the time. So these are kind of the major trends. This is where majority of the investments are heading towards, in those kind of 4 big buckets. If you're playing in any of those, I would love to meet and engage with you. Otherwise, I hope you've enjoyed the talk today and hope you enjoy the rest of your conference. Thank you so much.